Now that is what you call a puppy living in puppy heaven. Chewing on its own deer hide without all the other siblings wrestling with her. She's got it all to herself. Lucky little dog.
Huh? Now I wait to see what the hell we're doing. Slide right up. It's not the one we called up, is it? Man, that'd take a while. And this is how you come down.
It is barfing snow out there. Uh-oh, puppy thinks I'm talking to her. My hat are sitting down near that deer hide. You coming up? Anyway, more bad luck this morning. My Dodge kind of basically blew up on the way home. Luckily, near a small town and a great mechanic. And he gave me a Duramax diesel dually for a loaner to get home with the trailer and all the stuff. And got home, no problem. And then I had a friend of mine who owns a logging show here, and he phoned me last night. He said, hey, come in tomorrow morning, I'll load you up with a whole pile of prime firewood. I'm like, okay, man, I'm in. So I got up 5 o'clock this morning and started that truck up for the first time since we got back. It fired up for about 30 seconds and died, and now it just turns over and it won't start. I'm like, oh my God. My luck. So here we are, me and Puppy, 5:30 in the morning. So, we might as well take advantage of this time. I've got my coffee, it's hot. I've got a lot of people that need to be heard, so we won't waste a minute. So the sidekick, if I walk out of the shop, she knows. She comes running, but I'm trying to get her to sit beside me while I do this. She just came charging right up and decides that moose antlers are very fun to chew on. I guess the fresh deer skulls aren't good enough. Maybe she wants to chew on everything, whatever. As long as that keeps her out of trouble. Now, where was I? Man, I still got the sniffles. That was a long go of being sick. There's a lot of people sick right now. It's unfortunate. Hopefully she stays right there and we'll get some voices heard. Stories you read brought back memories that have been buried for a lot of years. Steve, hope this finds you well and all of your family. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm doing a resend on this. I sent it back quite a while ago. Just thought I'd try again. And if you get to it, great. If not, at least my story's out there. So I'd written this to you back last March, I believe, and I thought I'd resend it and give it a shot. Plus, there was a little add-on to this that wasn't in the original letter. It's long, and the original is down below. Down below this. So, but this was an incident that happened up in Alaska. It was back in 1969 or 70, the summer of my father and mother and I took a trip with the motorhome up to Alaska. Wonderful trip, very memorable anyway. We were on our way up to the Yukon Territories to Dawson City, going over that pass. I don't remember what it's called, but once we crossed the border back into Canada, then about 10 miles off the border, Dad and I, we stopped the motorhome, we get out to walk around, and all I remember is my father standing there, staring intently into the distance. There are not a lot of trees up there, and I turned and looked where he was looking, and as I looked up at his face, his eyes got bigger, and he pointed, and it was way out there. I couldn't even tell you, but it was such an open area that there was something very large moving across the slopes that moved very rapidly and just absolutely disappeared. I remember my dad turning and looking at me, and I was kind of looking at him, dumbstruck. He asked me, "Did I see that?" I nodded my head. "Yes," I said. And I remember saying something to the effect, telling Mom and Dad, "Just look at me." Sorry. "Yes," I said. And I remember saying something to the effect, telling Mom and Dad, just looked at me and said, "This is between us, son." And nothing was ever said again. I think he kind of knew that Mom would never believe us, so that's why we never said anything to her. The unfortunate thing is he passed away. Actually, it was about 2 years later. So I never had a chance to talk with him about it. I always wanted to, but that's how life goes sometimes. Steve, anyway, my letter below is the one that I previously sent, so it's a long one too. This is probably going to be a book by the time we get done. But I love listening to you and hearing the stories from everyone. We have to quit being silent. We have to start fighting for what we believe in and stop being afraid. Life's too short. Anyway, keep up the fight, Steve, and God bless you and your family. And I love that picture of that little pup you're going to be getting. Is it a Caucasian Shepherd? Beautiful dog. Great work. Like I said, keep it up. And if and when the battle does come, I'll be there. Take care, brother, and God bless Lloyd. Okay, man, thanks for that. I'm going to get to the rest of it in a couple of slurps of coffee. A little alligator dog that moved on to the bison skull now. All right. Say hello to everybody again. See how much you've grown in 24 hours. Okay? about this delicious elk bone? Why don't you chew on that instead of everything in the shop? Here, put it down there. There you go. You got that? There we go. All right. Hopefully she sits tight, stays out of trouble. Now, here we go on to the next part. Hi Steve, first of all, I'd like to say how happy I am that I found your channel. It has helped me to bring back some memories back into my mind, or should I say, clicked in my mind. And I am so happy to have some place that I could finally talk about this and not be given that look that everyone has when I tell them what happened to me. Or the, oh, you're drinking or smoking dope. Yeah, well, I was very straight that night. Now that the stories that, or should I say, or I should say letters that you are reading really has helped me to remember two definite ones. And the one that I'm pretty sure of, but I'm 99.9% sure, but there's that little doubt in my mind. But I believe that 99.9% has now gone to 100%. All right, man. And you can say my name, my first name I should say, and it's Lloyd. Steve, I've always been a firm believer in the people of the woods. I became fascinated with them when I was much younger, back in the early 70s. I'm 63 now. I guess I might have been a little earlier. Might have been a little earlier than that, but that was when I would get a lot of different books in the subject of Bigfoot. And all those stories just fascinated me. The chance encounters, the times that men were trapped in their cabins as something was trying to get rid of them. I read every book I could get a hold of and learned as much as I could. And when that movie came out, the Boggy Creek movie, I absolutely fell in love with it. As a matter of fact, I bought a digital copy of it so I could always go back and watch it. Anyway, kind of strengthened the subject, so here it goes. I had a dog kennel out in the Black Hills back in the mid to late 80s, and I lived on a ranch that was about 20 miles out of Custer, South Dakota. That week I had just come back from a visit from the eastern part of the state where I'm originally from, which is South Dakota. It was one of the free states during the big COVID BS. And I was driving back to the place late one night in this car I'd gotten from back east. There were some issues with it, but it ran okay. Well, up until that night, this had to be probably in the fall of '88, if my memory serves me right. Anyway, on this night I was driving home. It had been a full moon, and during full moons it is just beautiful driving through the Black Hills. A lot of times it's so bright you can even shut your headlights off and drive. And I used to do that. Anyway, I'm heading home and I lived on a road called Pass Creek. That's about 10 miles or so west of Custer, out by Jewel Cave National Park, west of Custer there. And then I had to turn south and had about another 10 miles south down this gravel road. Got about halfway, 3/4 of the way home, and all of a sudden my car decided it didn't want to run anymore. Now, it had been a full moon that night, but the moon had gone down because this was about 12:30 to 1 a.m. in the morning. It had just up and died, and found out later as my alternator decided to crap out of me. So, dead battery, car no so worked so good. And of course, this being a relatively new car, to me, I had none of my usual things in the car to help me out. Number one, took it. Number two, bigger than anything else, was a flashlight. Oh, sorry, number one, toolkit, the typo. Number two, bigger than anything else, was a flashlight. And once it got dark on that gravel road, it was pitch dark. I got out of my car, and I got my cigarette lighter, trying to light around my engine so I can see what the hell was going on. And I feel around for a few minutes, and then I realized that it was probably the alternator, and there was no sense in me trying to do anything. All the time that I was out of the car, under the hood, there was a feeling I had only felt one other time in my life. There was a lot of fear in my body. I'm standing there in the pitch dark, and there was not a sound. And I mean, you could probably even have heard a pin drop in the forest. It was that quiet. And at least sometimes you would hear maybe something like a coyote or some night bird. But there was absolutely dead silence. I was still about 2 to 3 miles from the little road that I had to turn down to get to my place, which is about another 1 to 1.5 miles to the ranch I lived at down in this valley. As I started walking, and I was walking about as fast as I could, I hear something I hear something is about 25 to 30 yards across the road on the right of me. As I was walking, as I said, there was a couple of times that I heard a real low growl, and I know what a mountain lion sounds like, and we don't have any bears that I know of as of yet in the Black Hills. Other than bear country, this was a growl that just reverberated through my body. God, that would suck. I started walking a little faster, but because I'm a smoker, I have a tendency to get winded pretty quickly, even back then. I moved along at a fairly rapid pace, and every time I would start to slow down, I could hear something hit a tree, like a tree hitting a tree, being picked up and slammed against it. And then I would hear there was almost like a stomping sound, and it wasn't an elk, and it wasn't a deer. And due to the fact that a lot of the land around where I lived was leased grazing land for ranchers, cattle, and as late as it was in the season, I knew there were no cattle around. And every now and then there would come that growl. I could feel a lot of my fear in my body. I didn't like the feeling of being stalked, and that's what it felt like. And all I could do at that point in time was I literally slowed down, and I looked off to the right hand where all the sounds were coming from, and I said out loud, "I'm just trying to get home. That's all I want to do." And I turned and kept walking. Now I had no flashlights whatsoever. I could not see a thing, even 10 yards into the woods, and it seemed like it just stayed out of that 10-yard range out a little bit further. When you get to where the old ranch boundary used to be, it opens up to kind of a plateau, and then I have to drop down into the valley and go back about a mile all the way to the end. There are some other houses and cabins that were built down in there, and all that land up to where I lived had been subdivided off into 10-acre plots. But there was 2 other families that lived on the road down by my ranch. Once I got to the open area, I crossed that cattle guard. I cut across the open area to where I could head down onto the road quicker than following the usual way down. And even all the way down to the ranch, I could hear something following me. It was a little further back into the tree line along the fence line in the valley there. And any time I heard it move, it was bipedal. It was no way animal. It was a human type of creature. When I finally got to my gate, I heard my dogs raising hell, and I was breathing a big sigh of relief. But when I got through the gate, and this is so strange, this little paddock that has a horse shed on it, and then a small fenced-in area you can keep like some horses, cattle you wanted to keep separated, etc. That was about 100 yards from the front of my trailer. As I stepped through the gate and I chained it back up, there came an even deeper, almost nastier type of growl that was back up into the woods and kind of up the hill, that went up into a sharp slope up a hill. The sound just went right through my body, even worse than when I was out on the road. When that happened, and I had about 15 dogs down to the ranch, when that happened and I had about 15 dogs down to the ranch that I was breeding and training, and every single one of them, when that growl went off, they totally shut up. And I do mean they shut up, dead silence once again. I headed up toward the house, and as I got up there, one of my better dogs that was out in the front yard came running out to me. And when it got to me, all she could do was look behind us towards where the noise came from. She is was well trained in obedience. I turned around and said to her, "Go see what it is, girl." And she took about 2 steps forward and literally jumped back and glued herself to my legs. The next 40 yards to the front door of the trailer, I tripped over her a couple of times, and she was never that close. She knew better, but she was very happy to go inside, and that was it for the night. We went in and went to bed. I didn't sleep at all that night. All I could do was just sit there with my lamp on and listen to the windows open to anything that I could hear out there. But there was no sounds at all, not even my dogs were barking, and they usually did because some critter would run across in front of the kennels. But probably until an hour or so before sunrise, there was not one audible sound that I could hear, and I still had that dread of something being out there. Ugh, that would suck. That would suck. Jumping forward about 24 hours, got my car back to the ranch, got it fixed, got it running. That night, it was getting close to deer season. I had a great place that I would sit out behind my barn and the deer would come into the back pasture, or I could sit on my front deck of the trailer, and there was another pasture behind the trailer that over the years that I lived there, I harvested a lot of deer. Plus friends and family would come out there too. Anyway, I headed out to the back of the barn, climbing up the hill beside it, and with my glasses, I could scout all the way to the back of the pasture, which was about 90 acres. That had woods on both sides, and the deer would come down at dusk, and it was a good place to shoot it. We usually kept them within about 100 to 200 yards from the back of the barn. I wonder what she's singing to me. Life is so bad in her crate. We kept them, so they were always closed once I harvested one, which made it nice. Okay, hold on a minute. We gotta do something with this. All right. Yeah, you gotta stay here. Let's start that paragraph again. Anyway, head out to the back of the barn, climbing up the hill beside it, and with my glasses I could scout all the way to the back of the pasture, which was about 90 acres, that had woods on both sides, and the deer would come down at dusk. And it was a good place to shoot it. We usually kept them within about 100 to 200 yards from the back of the barn, so they were always closed once I harvested one, which made it nice. That night, I was sitting up on top of the hill, had my binoculars, and was scouting the pasture. And it was getting dark. It was getting harder to see. You could make out lines out there, but it was getting to the point you couldn't really see what was out there. That night, there was probably 30 to 40 head of deer out there. There's a few typos throughout this thing, so be a little patient. And there's a couple of bucks that had my eye on over the summertime that I had spotted, and one of them showed up. It wasn't a tremendous size, but I always hunt more for meat than trophy. Bigger the deer, more meat. As I was looking through the herd and was smiling, when I saw that buck, all of a sudden I had made no sounds or nothing. It wasn't even hunting season yet, so there were no rifles going off like there usually is or anything else. The whole herd took off like a bat out of hell, and I mean they scattered in 50 different directions. I sat up there on the hill and watched. There were no coyotes, there were no wolves in the Black Hills that I know of, and at that time I had heard of mountain lions being in the area, and I knew that because I'd seen their tracks before. But just at the end of the pasture I caught a glimpse of something running. It had to be at least 7 to 9 feet tall, and a lot of long, and I'm going to say black hair, because as dark as it was getting, all I could see was the outline. But I could see as it ran past me, he was just inside of the tree line on the other side of the fence of the property, and I could just barely catch him as he went across there, heading in the direction of where a lot of deer went. It wasn't no more than 3 seconds and he was gone. That's how fast he moved. The next day I was out there and went to the place where I saw it run across, and the one pine tree that it went by, the top of its head, I couldn't even reach the branches. I'm only 5'4" anyway. I sat there for a long time trying to wrap my brain around what I just saw, and I did the next day make the mistake of bringing it up to some relatives and a friend of mine. All I got was a strange looks and remarks that fortunately I don't remember because they were not nice. Like I said, I've seen bears walk on 2 legs, but this is no bear. And even a bear walking on 2 legs did not move as fast as this thing did, and the strides it took was incredible. I now believe it was probably the same one that was following me all the way home that night. I talked to some others in the same conversation in the town, and there was some that were very skeptical, and there were others, from the way I could tell, they knew what I was talking about, but they're too afraid to say anything. It's a shame that we cannot speak out about being... It is a shame that we cannot speak out without being ridiculed, but that's the way our world is nowadays. Say the wrong thing, make a mistake, and by God, they'll make you pay for it. Only if you let them. Crazy little dog. I found your channel about a month ago, maybe, and have been going through have been going through yet little by little, and I'm happy to have the place that I can tell my story to that others can relate to, and that hopefully will open up memories for others to speak out and not be afraid to. Just to let you know, I continue living down on that ranch for another 4 to 5 years, and I continue going out into the woods and hunt, and I also would go out and pan for gold at some of the streams. And to be very honest with you, there were a lot of times being by myself, and I enjoyed the time by myself, but there were a lot of times that I knew I was not alone. It wasn't just a, well, maybe I shouldn't be here. There was always a strong sense of, I should not be there, and I'm watching you. But I never let it drive me from what I enjoy doing. Sometimes I'd even say out loud when I was out riding my four-wheeler out in the middle of the woods, get that feeling. And sometimes I'd even say out loud, hey, I'm just passing through. Be nice to me. I promise you I'm not going to hurt you. Never had any trouble after that. I live in the eastern part of the state now, and I wish I was living back out there in the Black Hills. I miss my mountains. But you, Steve, really live in some beautiful country. I'm really envious of you. Forgive me, God, I know I shouldn't be, but from the videos that I've seen of yours, you're truly in God's land. Or should I say, that's my Garden of Eden. Anyway, I know it's been long, and I want to thank you for the website. Or the channel, I should say. I enjoy hearing what others have to say. God bless you, Steve, and may He always keep you and your family in His loving arms, protected and safe. God bless. Thanks again for doing a wonderful thing. This is my prayers. Wonderful thing like this. My prayers are with you. Take care. I do have another story, but that will be for another time. And this one happened up in Alaska. Once again, thank you for your time and all your efforts, Lloyd. Lloyd, thank you for your time, man. That took a lot of your time, which is worth gold, to type that out and send it out to all the people through me. So we appreciate you and your time, all right? And this place is nothing without people like you. Crazy dog. And again, I guess the story that he mentioned in the end about Alaska, that was the one that he opened up with on this, re-emailed into us. But anyway, there's nothing extraordinary about that experience, those experiences, when it comes down to being compared to what hundreds of people have written into us. Similar, almost identical. The sounds going through your body, being paced, growled at. On and on and on, right? Thankfully, whatever this was left you alone, but it seems to be most of the people get left alone anyway, for the most part, from these beings, maybe not some other ones, right? It's a crazy world we're living in. So much going on. I'm trying to stay away from the internet right now because I get non-stop people are sending me stuff for me to be aware of and try to share with you, and it's various topics, and 100% of them piss me off, as they should you. But anyway, I'm going to keep on track, keep my rants down to hopefully a nothing right now. What was that crunch? Well, the snow's still piling up out there. It's still pitch black out. Let's get some more voices heard. Hi Steve, how's it going? I hope all's well. I've been listening for over a year now, and I have an answer, and now have an answer that always gave me pause. I'm from Ohio, and I have family that lives in Clarksville, Ohio, really close to Cowan Lake. I'd go to visit in the summers and stay a few months at a time. Plus, we'd go other times for family events. Their house is over 100 acres with a small pond about a mile from the house. When I was there, I would love to walk to the pond and fish because it had some nice bass. Plus, I lost the biggest fish ever in that pond. Me being around 11 or 12, I had no idea about Sasquatch or anything like that. I was just a kid from the city. A few times, some very strange things happened to me I could not figure out until I've been listening to the stories. First strange thing that happened to me was me and my cousin Scotty was fishing. I was on one side of the pond and he was on the other. On the sides, there were acres of woods all around the pond on 3 sides, and the side we would walk from the house was cleared so you could see the pond from homestead. I thought my cousin was messing with me, throwing rocks about the size of a golf ball, and they would land right where my bobber was. I thought, wow, Scott sure has a good aim. I mean, in my 12-year-old mind, that could be the only answer to the question. And I got the feeling of fear I've never to this day have experienced. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I took off to the other side of the pond where Scott was and didn't have any reason to be so scared. But I blew it off until I told Scott I didn't catch anything because he kept throwing rocks at me. He said he didn't throw any rocks. I thought he was just lying and blew it off. The next strange thing that happened was the same summer. I'd gotten up early to go fishing by myself because Scotty didn't want to go because he lived there full time and just didn't love it as much as I did, so I'd go alone. On one side of the pond, there's a shallow part that you could see the bottom for 20 yards or so when the water was down. When I went over to that part of the pond, there were what looked like to me someone took a railroad tie, them large pieces of wood, and made holes about 3 foot deep in a straight line about 3 yards apart from one part of the pond to the other. I again was confused because there's no way anyone could do that. There's no railroad tracks anywhere near that place, and who would cut down a tree to make holes? That bothered me for years. I told Scotty and he went with me to see them, and he had no clue other that someone trapping. But what was they trapping? And it's private property, and my uncle was not nice to people on his land hunting without permission, so I didn't think that made any sense. I never for a minute thought it was Bigfoot or any animal. I was just without a clue. Thinking back, I can remember hearing whistling coming from something I thought was a bird. The thing is, I've yet to hear that sound again until I've become interested in the topic. Several times I remember going to the pond to swim or fish and smelt the worst smell ever. And my aunt would just say something was probably dead in the area, so I didn't give it a second thought, although I never seen anything dead. I remember every time I smelled that smell, the fear would come, and I would be watching my back so much I couldn't enjoy the fishing, so I would leave. I believed that the holes were made by a Sasquatch that had walked across, and they left them. The sounds were them also, I believe. The rocks too, and the fear. Many times I remember the woods being silent, but I didn't have any reference to the cause. I'm glad I was just a kid that didn't have a clue. I know they're there now. I've never seen them, and I'm glad I didn't. I just thought I would get that off my chest after 40 years. God bless you and your family. Jimmy. You can use my name. I don't care what people think of me. I'm not a people pleaser. And now am I, Jimmy. All right, thanks for that email, man. I'm glad it helped put something to rest. I'm glad you finally got it off your chest after 40 years. How many people have we heard say that same statement? Okay, listen, you little fur bag. Come here. Come here. What are we going to do with you, huh? What are we going to do with you? Oh, put you on a little leash. You don't want to be tied up beside me. You don't want to sit down and sit still. I put you in your little crate and you start whining and making me feel guilty. All right? We're going to put you in your crate and ignore you while we get all these important voices heard. Right? There's a little light bulb, glow light that Sarah got for her if she ever gets out in the dark. It's tough to see in the dark, this little black fur ball. But anyway, I know. There's so many interesting things on this planet and you're brand new to it. Okay? Huh? Goofy little thing. Okay, I'm going to put you in your crate while I get some more voices heard. Alright? Because you're just a little bit much right now. It's another brand new day in your life. And there's so much for you to see and chew on. Alright? You little goofball. Alright. A couple emails with some little bit of lack of punctuation comboed with my little distraction is making this morning not that smooth. Well, not every morning's gonna be perfect, right? Excuse me. Let's get somebody else heard. This looks like a fairly lengthy one, but it's not quite light out yet. Now, this is titled My Experience. Hi Steve, my name is Devin Parrish, and I don't give a shit if you use my name. I've got nothing to hide. I got turned on to your channel in the spring of 2020 and watched it daily. Growing up, I had heard my dad and a few of my uncles talk about their experiences with the unknown. So you could say I've known from a young age that the world is not what the schools teach here. Growing up, I could spend as much time as I could in the mountains hunting and fishing, and still do to this day. I joined the Marines in 2017 and ended up getting out as a corporal in 2021 due to the vaccine mandate. The bastards even threatened me with brig time if I continued to refuse the vaccine. That's some shit. Now, on to my experience. October 2014 or 50, and I can't remember the exact year, I was hunting with my dad on the Slide Mountain in between Craig and Hayden, Colorado. It was our final day to hunt and just happened to try a new spot. We had almost reached the top of the mountain when I heard what appeared to be rocks getting clicked together in a rhythm from the other side of a small grove of aspens. Now the sound was very defined. It didn't sound like rocks tumbling down the side of the mountain, and it wasn't the sound of hooves. After being a ranch manager for a while, I know what hooves on rocks or grass sounds like. July 2017, I was camping on the northern end of the Bighorn Mountain Range in Wyoming, and this is where most of my experiences took place. I decided to stay up all night for some unknown reason. When about 0200 in the morning, I heard what appeared to be two different creatures trying to mimic an elk bugle. The tone on the sound was much deeper than what should be a typical bugle sound from one ridge to another. I didn't think much of it at the time until I went on another camping trip about a month and a half later that ended up being in the middle of the elk rut, and hearing all the bugling then made me realize that the two sounds were completely different. June 2022, my fiance and I decided to try and find a new fishing spot closer to where we live and more remote. So we decided to head up a drainage outside the town we live in called Grass Creek, and after hitting the final Y in the road before going into the Shoshone National Forest land, I happened to look off to the left-hand side of the road and down the embankment. There was something that caught my eye. It was an animal hide, but nobody around it. So I got it to investigate and found that it was a wolf pelt that had been ripped off the animal carcass. Steve, there was no head, tail, or legs, just the back portion of the hide, and one could tell that it had not been cut off due to the fact that there were no clean cut marks on it. I personally believe a Sasquatch did that, but none of my coworkers says that it was a grizzly. But one of my coworkers says that it was a grizzly. I don't quite believe that. June 2022, my cousin and I decided to make a small boys trip up to the same camping spot that I had heard the mimicking elk bugles 5 years prior. It was our second day up there, and we decided to try to get to Duncan Lake to fish. We finally got there after getting the four-wheeler stuck in 6-foot deep snowbanks about 4 times. When we got to the lake, we realized we were the first people in there for the season. On our trip around the lake to get to our favorite fishing spot, we kept seeing a random wolf print every 10 or 15 feet in 3-foot deep snow. There were no melted spots in the snow for other prints to be. Another weird thing that was seen was about 10 feet up the shoreline would be multiple trout that had a single bite taken out of each one. Later that evening, we were in the middle of cooking up dinner at about 7:30 or 8 at night when we heard something scream from one ridge to another ridge and get a response. This happened about 3 more times within a matter of 5 minutes. With that, we decided to pack up and leave. One small problem was that our truck's battery had died. Oh no. After finding ourselves in that unfortunate situation we were in now, we decided to walk the 500 yards to the next camp spot to see if they could help us jump the truck. As soon as we got into the middle of the meadow, there was one more scream, but this one was different. It felt as if it was directed at us personally. We both spun around, pistols drawn, and we hurried along to get assistance. We finally got help and packed up camp in the dark as quickly as possible. July 2022, I decided to make a day trip to the same location in the northern Bighorns to see my grandpa, who was camping in the same location as 2 of my other experiences. After driving some of the trails with my grandpa and my fiance, I decided to drop my grandpa off at the camper and head to Duncan Lake to show my fiance the lake. As my fiance and I got down to Duncan Lake, everything seemed normal at the time, but that changed rather quickly. As we're sitting on a log on the lake shore, the whole lake went from lively to absolutely quiet. The bugs landed, the fish stopped jumping, and the birds stopped singing. The woods were deep quiet, and we both felt a pressure to our rear. I turned around to watch that area carefully as I began to hear heavy footsteps. and it was only in sets of 2. After scanning the woods for several minutes, we decided it was time to go. I handed her my rifle and drew my pistol and kept it pointed in the area we felt the pressure coming from. We quickly moved back to the four-wheeler and hightailed it out of there as fast as I could drive. My fiancé is certain that what caused the whole woods to change was a bear or a wolf. I spent a lot of time around those woods, and I know it was neither of those. I apologize for liking this email, Steve, but you always say to send everything, not leave it out for another email. I know I didn't have any actual visual sighting of these creatures, but I do know that Sasquatch is real, and you can't change my mind otherwise. I met a lot of really good friends in the Marine Corps that had a lot of experiences. These damn things won't scare me out of the woods. Stay safe out there, Steve, and keep fighting the good fight. Endo email. You stay safe out there and you keep fighting the fight too, my man. And welcome to the Club of No Return, Devin. It's a big one, isn't it? It's a big club. Many members globally. Many members. Oh, it's funny, I was thinking there, I think that was the last night, I was kind of daydreaming about how many people have these experiences, and I wonder what the percentage of you out there have had the same reaction I've had. So I don't hear that many people share their experience and then go on a rant about how they're pissed off, we've been lied to and not informed honestly. I know, obviously, I do that a lot, and that's a lot of my motivation, but we don't normally hear too many other people who experience these things voice their anger at that fact that goes along with it, that they're pissed that we're not taught the truth. Right? I wonder why that is. I wonder why, but it cracks open a lot, you know. There's not that many of us, but enough of us. Once you start digging and diving and wondering why, it cracks open many other truths. It just creates nonstop questions and frustration of how our lives have been affected by some dark sons of bitches out there. There's no bird flying around the shop now. But anyway, I'll stop there before I go on my usual rant about being frustrated with the pricks. Something needs to be done, I'll tell you what, especially up here in communist Canada. Just a couple quick little tidbits. How's that sound? Because right now, currently, the government, our tyrant, who is terrified of the people. They're slowly and rapidly chipping away at taking our firearms away from us, which is absolutely wrong. And I get a lot of emails and comments from people saying, "Hey, Steve, what do you think about the guns being taken away? What do you think about your communist leader taking the guns away?" And one thing I can assure you, far more honest, good Canadian people, gun owners, they're not handing them over. They're just hiding them. Far more. Nobody's that stupid. There's a handful of stupid people out there that'll bend over and pass off their guns, but I assure you, the majority of good, honest, intelligent Canadians, they're not giving their guns to that tyrant. They're just not, and they're not going to. They're going to hide them, and that's all there is to it, obviously. Another thing, too, is that in our country right now currently is the communist China has set up what's being called Chinese police forces in Canada. It's very real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's very alarming. You imagine being let's just say that you had sought out refuge from a communist country and you came to a place like Canada, right? Canada is one of the best, apparently used to be or should be, one of the best places in the world to be received as a refugee. Now you imagine trying to escape a communist country where possibly you are being beaten, killed, taken hostage, even your organs sold, and all of a sudden those same filthy bastards that you managed to escape are now in the same country, the safe country that you sought refuge in, and now those dirty, filthy bastards are setting up shop in the very country that you found safe refuge at. Could you imagine that nightmare? Can you imagine that's like one of those horror movies where somebody's kidnapped, kept in a basement for years, and raped and beaten and tortured, and they finally escape? They find a police officer and the cop turns around and takes them right back to that house and gives them back to their captor. That's actually going on in Canada right now, you guys. It's going on today here in this country. Communist China has people here, they're calling police officers. Who knows who the F they really are. Obviously more than likely military, without a doubt. And they are here in my country. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, I know that's completely off topic, but it's going on right now and it's really been brought to my attention a lot, as I obviously had heard about that quite a while earlier. But right now there's various news sources that I trust that have looked into it and they're reporting on it, and they're going to these so-called Chinese police stations in Canada to show the people what's up. How freaking alarming is that? I could not imagine the terror in the souls of some of the Chinese refugees that may have escaped that pitiful country and came here for safety, and now those same evil, filthy bastards are here possibly with guns in their hips and handcuffs, and who knows what they do in the night, right? Who knows? This place is absolutely going for, it's just turning into an absolute shit show. So anyways, I'll close on with a word to my fellow Canadians. Don't ever give up your firearms, ever. Do not give them up. If anything, acquire more. And hide them, and keep your zipper shut, and don't give it up. Do not give it up. Don't give anything up. That goes for everybody too on the planet listening to this right now. Do not give up your freedoms, your rights, even though they're being taken away. You just can't. You can't. Anyway, that was my second coffee. Babbling. It's almost 7 o'clock, and I'm gonna get up and get at him, get at her, and I just might come back and sit down relaxed and see if I can't get a whole pile of voices heard again today, and start getting caught up in a lot of things around here. The hats. I know a lot of people emailing about the hats. Oh, we still got to get that organized too, and hopefully I'll get that done in the next week, on top of all of my other shit. Oh boy, here we go. Talk to you guys shortly.
Well, they need to be worried about getting Nick out to get his plane instead of that fucking me worried about getting us out and get on the ramp.
Time is fucking money.
Huh? Now they wait to see what the hell we're doing.
a while.
And this is how you come down.